Everybody had the opportunity this past week to be at the Florida chapter meeting with the IAEI board. And during that time, I took the opportunity to speak with a few individuals. So you're going to hear in this session a discussion with Ryan Jackson and Vince Dellacroce. So hope you enjoy it, and I'll catch you at the end of this session. And it all starts now. Ryan Jackson.
Tom Dimitrovich. What a pleasure.
We see each other online.
All the time.
All the time.
Right.
You have your YouTube channel. You do education and you're working with Steel Tube Institute now.
Yeah, so I've been with Steel Tube Institute since January, actually. So
of 2023?
Of 2023, yeah. So
Wow.
It's not that long ago,
No.
but they reached out and asked me if I was interested. And I got to be honest, I was really honored because I don't know if you know the history, but I'm taking over for Joe Andre, who just retired. And
Okay.
Joe's on panel 5. I've known Joe for 20 years.
Yep.
And before Joe, it was Richard Lloyd, Dick Lloyd.
That's right.
And Dick was really a mentor of mine when I was a very young electrical inspector. He was one of the first people that I thought was really an industry giant that was
Sure.
also approachable.
Yeah.
So for me to even be mentioned in the same breath as Dick Lloyd and then Joe Andre, it was
Absolutely.
a big deal for me.
Very big
so
shoes to fill.
It is, yeah. So
Absolutely.
I'm so excited and really working with Steel Tube Institute and representing them. What the one of the biggest things that it allows me to do is to go to a lot more IAEI functions.
Oh, yeah.
And, I mean, that's what I'm here today doing, right, at the Florida chapter, is I'm teaching in the program. I taught yesterday, I'm teaching today, I'm teaching tomorrow. And this gives me a way to do it and to get to all the meetings and
Right.
interact with everybody, because one of the things that I think a lot of people in the industry agree about is just how important IAEI has been for their career.
Oh, absolutely.
And
Absolutely.
I'm not necessarily trying to sell anything here, but
No,
IAEI
you're
has
right.
been a big part of my career. It really
Mine
has
too.
been. And
Absolutely.
it's not just the stuff in the classroom, it's the stuff in the hallways
The relationships.
and at night and all of that.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so I'm so happy to be able to come out to these functions like this and be able to interact with people that you don't get to see nearly as often as you would like. So
Yeah. Yeah.
it's been great working with Steel Tube Institute. It's been wonderful so far.
Yeah. So now I know. So you were here at the Florida chapter, and you said you did some presentations.
Yeah.
What were your programs?
So we're doing the analysis of changes
okay.
yesterday and today. So yesterday I taught on the panel 1 and the global code-wide changes, and taught with my friend Vince Dellacroce, which is always a pleasure.
Oh, yeah.
It's so much fun.
Yeah.
And then today they had me covering panel 11, which is motors and air
that's right.
conditioners.
Yeah. You told
And
me
then,
about that.
yeah, and it's like, okay, great, So, and then today was panel 17, which I serve on, and that is mainly appliances and bodies of water, swimming pools and those kinds of things. So yeah, so that was yesterday and today, and then of course I've been interjecting, because you get used to teaching for a living,
Yes.
and you just can't shut up. You can't.
No.
I mean, it's like, these are my people and they're talking about my stuff. You can't expect me to shut up. Come on,
right, that's right.
So I'm
That's
like,
right.
talking. I'm like I'm like Hermione in Hogwarts, right? I'm like, oh God, I want to say something.
Yeah.
So it's been great, man. I've really enjoyed it.
And that's what I love that about the IAEI meetings, because you go to the meeting and depending upon the different, like if I go to the Eastern section, right, they have a personality. You're dealing with people from Massachusetts and Boston and New York, you know, and they have their way. You come down here in the South, right, and they have their way, and everybody has a different experience, and different perspective.
It's just a different feel.
It is, but you can't sit in the audience being as engaged as we are, even as if you sit down and say, look, I inspect, and you're listening to somebody from a different state say what they do in their state, and you go, well, wait a second, that's not what we do here,
right? Yeah.
And you got to voice your opinion.
Yeah, and this is an avenue to do it, the vehicle to do it. So yeah, it's great. So yeah, it's been great doing that. And then tomorrow I'm teaching a 2-hour class on separately derived systems, which is going to be way fun. So transformers, generators, things like that. So that's going to be a really good time.
That'll be a really good. That's a very interesting topic as well, because because a lot of people don't, there's a lot of misconceptions about separately derived and whether or not, like when you're going to cover generators.
Yeah.
Oh, and the transfer switch and the bonding.
Absolutely.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So what is and what is not a separately derived system? And, here's where education is so important is we're all continuously evolving and always getting better.
Sure.
I taught a class on transformers like 4 days ago.
Okay.
And we went 2 hours on transformers.
Yep.
In the airport on my way here, I get a phone call from a design professional in New York City, and he says, I installed a Y-to-Y transformer, and I did not do it as a separately derived system. And I said, well, that's not your choice. It's a transformer. It is a separately derived system by definition.
Exactly.
And he said, not if you connect the two neutrals together and connect and I was speechless, absolutely floored. And the more I thought about it, I initially, of course, because when somebody says
he's not driving a ground, he's not grounding it there. He's just passing the equipment ground, the neutral, the grounded conductor. He's bonding it from the secondary.
Not to the frame either, not to the enclosure.
No, you're isolating
not to the
it.
dirt. Yeah, and what he said is he said, I need a Y, I need 12208, and I'm in the middle of a building, and it's tilt-up concrete. There is no structural steel. The water pipe is 10 million miles away.
Right.
And I really don't want to create some sort of grounding electro system, so I'm just not going to make it a separately derived system.
And that does not violate anything in the
doesn't violate anything. And I just thought, wow, I've been teaching separately derived systems for 20 years. And boy, did I just get my world shifted around.
Yeah.
But that's one of the things that's so cool about coming to meetings like this is I got challenged with that. And you know what I'm going to talk about tomorrow.
Oh, absolutely. And then you're going to have, here's the other thing I absolutely love. You can share that type of information, and then inevitably you'll get that person in the audience who will say, I disagree.
Right.
And then sometimes, like I think it was the PV system, right? I was doing a Michigan chapter, and we were talking about PV interconnecting and whether that when you connect to the line side, if it's a service conductor, if it's not a service conductor.
Okay.
And then the entire room gets energized.
Yeah.
And then you'll have the one person standing at the one microphone say one thing, and the other guy gets up and he has a disagreement. Right. And then sometimes as a presenter, you can just sit back and
back and get paid.
That's true. And you're like, this is beautiful because we're learning from each other.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
absolutely. And the person explaining their position is, whether they know it or not, they're also learning because as an instructor, if you really want to understand something on a deep level, teach it to somebody.
Oh yeah.
Because you can't teach it unless you really understand it.
That's exactly right.
So as this individual in the audience is explaining their position, they're learning as well, trying to defend their position.
Absolutely. And what you might learn as an instructor, you might learn a different way to present the material.
Yes.
Because in some cases, I've watched two people debate a point that I was trying to convey. And in their discussion, I go, wow, that is a really interesting way to describe and teach what I'm doing. And then I'm taking notes watching their discussion.
Right. Yeah, I've done that too.
Yeah,
I've done that too. And even if the person saying something is wrong, it teaches you as an instructor because then you know that there is that misunderstanding out there.
Exactly.
And you realize, oh, wait a minute, that person is wrong, but I can see how they got to where they got.
Right.
And now I need to really change the way I approach it so I can make sure that nobody else gets that misunderstanding.
And then there's those awkward moments when you realize he's right.
Oh, yeah.
I'm wrong.
Let me tell you, the two people that can turn out your lights as an instructor. Number one is a first-year apprentice that doesn't know anything about anything.
Yeah.
That guy can change your day because they'll just raise their hand and they'll say, that's not what it says.
Yeah.
And you're like, oh, I know that's what it says. And they're like, well, I'm reading it. It doesn't say that.
Yeah.
Because you read it the way you wanted it to read.
That's right.
And that person who doesn't know anything, they're reading it with virgin eyes and they're saying, that's not what it says.
Absolutely.
So that person can completely wreck you.
Yes.
The other person, of course, is when you say something and they raise their hand and they start talking about UL standards and everything else. I did a class in St. Louis where I said something I made a statement, and the hand goes up, he's like, well, according to UL 604789, and I'm like, oh God, security? You get this guy knows what he's talking about. Can you get him out of here?
He's referencing a section in a document that I didn't even download.
Right, exactly. Yeah. So, but that's another great opportunity to learn.
So what I do is I forget, I had a large audience at an IAEI meeting, and I made a statement. I said, look, we were talking about fault current. And I said, your available fault current will always be larger from the utility. Okay. And I had a little hand go up, and I said, yeah. And he goes, I work for a very large hospital, and we have more on-site generation, which provides more fault current than what's coming from the utility. And I was like, wow.
I guess there is that world. Yeah.
That's exactly right. So whenever I teach that class now on those same slides, I'll go, you know what I used to say was this, and I tell that story. Yeah. Because it was a learning moment for me. And then I try to put the audience in that same learning experience to say, look, this is what I used to say. Yeah. And I was educated. And then there are people in that audience that have the same opinion.
The same opinion. And then they can look at you as an instructor and they can say, okay, here's a guy that's willing to admit that he doesn't know everything.
Exactly.
Because nobody does. know, and we all know that. It's just some people have a hard time admitting that they don't know everything.
Absolutely. So now help me understand Steel Tube Institute. Now, what's obviously it's steel tube.
Right. Yep.
Right. So,
conduit.
So it's conduit. So it's flexible conduit you deal with? No.
So EMT, rigid, and IMC. Steel, not aluminum.
Okay, but you still have to understand the flexible, because you have to understand and be able to educate between the differences between the two.
Oh, absolutely.
And all
absolutely. Yeah, and the reality is there's applications where a steel raceway is not the best solution.
Yeah.
So, as an educator, you still have to teach people that, look, okay, if you're going to install PVC, even though it's not a superior product to steel tube. If you're going to install that stuff, here's the requirements to do it. Right. Because that's the reality,
That's right.
So, and then we also just picked up a stainless steel division as well, which is really important when you talk about like swimming pool and corrosive environments.
Hold on.
Yep.
Okay. Steel Tube Institute, you said you picked up a division. So Steel Tube Institute is not a manufacturer.
No.
It's just an association.
Correct. Yeah. So we have member companies that are all part of the Steel Tube Institute.
Gotcha.
So we all have similar goals.
Right.
So we want to make sure that we're on. Yeah, it's like NEMA. Exactly.
It's like NEMA.
Exactly.
Okay. Yeah. So NEMA is for the electrical manufacturers, and Steel Tube Institute is for those who make the products that fall under what you said, rigid metal conduit.
Right. Yeah.
Okay.
So so there are certain things that we talk about, and there's certain topics that are completely out of bounds. We don't talk about costs. We don't talk about profit. We don't talk, none of that stuff. There's no collusion. But we want to make sure that our interests are taken care of. We talk about processes and galvanizing and different things. So so it's like-minded individuals, and there's always a place to get like-minded people together.
Correct. Now you guys, Steel Tube Institute, I believe, have a software application.
Yes. Yeah.
Want to talk about that one?
So GEMI is what it's called. GEMI.
GEMI.
Yeah, GEMI, GEMI. So, that is thanks for asking me that.
I know.
Thank you. Grounding electromagnetic interference.
Oh, okay.
Dodge that bullet. Yeah, okay. So grounding and electromagnetic
And I'm not editing that out.
No, I don't blame you. So this was back well before my time, but I think probably back in the 90s when Dick Lloyd was with Steel Tube. In fact, it came from NFPA. NFPA, there was a proposal originally that wanted to know, okay, how long can I run a steel conduit and still have it do its job as an equipment grounding conductor? Right. And that's a good question. And I had that question one time as an inspector. I saw like a 300-foot long steel raceway being used as the equipment ground. And I had that question. At some point, there's going to be too much impedance, and it's not going to trip the breaker, and we're going to have an electrical hazard. So somebody made a proposal to make something about steel raceways, and it got rejected, but it started a good discussion because it's a discussion that needed to be had. So NFPA and IAEI and Steel Tube Institute, they kind of did a joint study, and it was with the Georgia Tech Institute. Yeah, the Georgia Technical Institute, Georgia Tech.
Yep.
And they got steel conduits, and they also got individual conductors, and they got non-metallic raceways.
Gotcha.
And they energized them, and they put fault current on them, and we figured out, how far can you run conduits, and how far can you run? Yeah. And it's also a question not just with steel raceways, but with steel raceways plus a green wire, or PVC conduits that just have a green wire. That we do need to know how long can you run this thing before it's going to be a hazard.
That's right.
And what we found out, and this isn't me wearing a steel tube hat, I found this out before I worked with steel tube. You can run a steel raceway for a pretty substantial distance. Because yes, a copper is a better conductor than steel, certainly. But which is a better conductor, a small piece of copper or a big old thing of raceway, right? And it's not even necessarily skin effect, because it's still 60 hertz. So there's skin effect happening. It's just mass. It's a giant pipe compared to a small piece of copper. So it's
and that pipe is put together with threads.
Well, they tested it with set screw fittings and with compression fittings when they did it. Now, of course, any installation is only as good as the person installing it.
That's true.
And regardless of what we're installing. So of course, set screws need to be tight. Lock nuts need to be tight. Compression fittings need to be tight.
Absolutely.
But that's true whether or not you have an equipment grounding conductor in the raceway or not.
That's right.
Either way, these things need to happen. And that equipment grounding conductor, it needs to be made up properly too. If I can't trust you to tighten a set screw on a conduit, I can't trust you to make a termination on a conductor.
That's right.
So
you're right.
The workmanship part of it, or the installing things in a professional manner, that's been a code requirement since 1897. But it is still important. We need to make sure we're doing things correctly. So the software is free, and I used it back to answer that question I had as an inspector back in like 2003 as to how long can this raceway go. So I downloaded the software. It's very easy to use, and it'll teach you a lot when it comes to electrical theory.
And I know that there are set points that you can put in there, like different trigger points and whatnot, so you can configure it per your application. And to your point, it was very easy to use.
So
did they just update it?
They just updated it. They just updated it as well. And what you do is you're going to put down your voltage, right? Because the voltage is important, obviously. So we put down the voltage of the circuit, we put down the length of the circuit, and then you put in the rating of the overcurrent device that you're trying to trip. And then, because different manufacturers have different trip curves, you can assign the amount of fault current you want to generate. So if I've got a 30 amp circuit and I want the circuit breaker or the fuse to operate in its instantaneous range, then how much current do I need to put on that 30 amp?
To get it to the trip there,
Depending on the manufacturer and the device. It might be 6 times to 10 times the rating. So you'll say, okay, 30 amp breaker, I want to generate at least 300 amps of fault current.
So here's the other thing. So when my equipment grounding conductor is, say, a bare copper 2-point copper conductor, I'm worried about the damage curve for that conductor. I would think that a metal raceway damage curve is way out there. So when you say I wanted to trip in the instantaneous region, that's just for...
I'm thinking just safety,
From a safety, you wanted to trip as fast as possible, right? It's but from a damage perspective, it takes a lot more current to damage a metal tube than it does.
That's a great point.
A conductor.
That's a really good point, because it's one thing if it trips the breaker and creates a safe condition, but if it's not capable of doing it again because it's blown itself apart, well, then who wins?
Or annealed or anything like that. So you have all those other items. So now, is the raceway, the steel tube, listed as an equipment grounding conductor?
So 250.118 gives the different types of equipment grounding conductors.
Yeah.
And of course, item 1 is the wire conductor, copper, aluminum, copper clad. And then items 2, 3, and 4 are rigid, IMC, and EMT.
That's right.
And those are the only 3 that actually don't come with any other conditions.
Right.
You can use those as the equipment grounding conductor, period. When it comes to flexible metal conduit, you can if it's less than 6 feet, flexibility, maximum current device of 20.
That's
and,
right.
Liquid tight, same thing. MC cable, same thing. So rigid IMC and EMT are they're permitted as an equipment grounding conductor. Full stop.
But the UL standard doesn't necessarily have to say yes, this is listed as that because of the construction of it.
Right. Yeah. And same thing with the fittings too. UL 514 covers raceway fittings, and raceway fittings, they have continuity tests through them. So a lot of times we'll say you have to use fittings that are listed for grounding. Well, conduit fittings, according to UL 514, they have to pass the grounding and bonding test.
That's right.
If you don't pass that part of the test, they don't get listed.
Yeah.
So so a lot of times that language isn't necessarily needed in the code.
Well, that sounds cool. So what's next? Where's your next?
Oh boy. So I think my next trip is for the Michigan chapter of IAEI. So I'll be up there with my friends Dave Williams and Don Iverson and that crew, and really looking forward to that. I'm going to be teaching separately drive systems up there again. Okay. And then I'll also be teaching hazardous location fundamentals. Wow. Which I love. I love doing that. Yeah. So let me tell you a story. My first class that I ever taught was on hazardous locations.
Oh, really?
Which is right. Yeah, exactly. So your reaction was the same, right? That was the same reaction I had. So a friend of mine in Utah, Gary Beckstrand's his name, he came up to me and he said, listen, I think you're you're getting into the code and you're a code guy and everything. He said, you want to fill in and do some seminars for me? And I was like, yeah, let's do it. He goes, okay, cool. Your first class is Saturday, hazardous locations, 8 hours. And I just froze, and I'm like, "You got to be kidding me!" And he gave me the PowerPoints and everything, and I mean, I just spent the next 36 hours reading those slides and drinking coffee.
Absolutely.
So it was at a college, and I'm thinking, okay, we're going to be in a classroom, right? And we'll be doing hazardous locations, and no. I got to the college. They have me in the lecture arena.
Oh my God.
This massive seating for seriously 5,000 people. And I'm up on the stage like Steve Jobs introducing the Apple X13 or something with screens that are 40 feet wide behind me. Right. And I mean, I was like, I got there at 7:30 for an 8 o'clock class, and I was so close to him. I was like, wow, see ya. I was like, forget this whole teaching thing. But ever since, and 12 people showed up. Oh, okay. And I'm up on the stage talking to 12 people, and I'm like, hello, do you have questions? Oh yeah. Beautiful. So ever since then, though, because that forced me to dive into hazardous locations and really learn at a deep level, and I fell in love with it. Yeah. And I've been teaching hazardous locations every year for 20 years or something, and I love doing it.
That has been my weakest subject.
It's a different world.
It is a different
really
world. Yeah. So we did in Ohio. I think it was in Ohio many moons ago. They had you have the code panel, right? Right. Yeah. So at the time they had somebody had this idea that said, hey, what we're going to do is the panelists aren't going to get the questions in advance.
Oh yeah.
Okay. Right. And then what we're going to do is we're going to pick a number out of the hat. Oh. And that's the question that you answer.
Oh boy. Okay.
So
wow.
You're gonna love this. So they pulled the question. Now I'm looking at they give you the packet, right? So now we're at the point where I have the packet. I have the list of questions.
But you don't know which one?
But no, I don't know which one I'm going to get, right? So I'm looking down through there. And the way they did the game, they said, okay, you can phone a friend, right? So you could say, look, I want someone in the audience to answer this one, right?
I like that.
Okay, so I knew Jack Jameson was on that panel. And I know Jack was my ace in the hole, right? Yeah. If I got hazardous locations, but I'm looking at like 100 questions.
Right.
What's the chance?
2% chance. Yeah.
Every single question was Haslock, and I'm like, this is insane because I was only allowed like 3 strikes. three phone a friends.
Right.
And then I'm like, well, listen, I said, forget it. I mean, I'm not going to lie to anybody in the room. This is my weakest subject.
Oh, no.
So does anybody want to answer this?
Right.
And it was a humbling experience because I had not prepared for it at all.
Yeah.
But it is a completely.
But you know what, though?
different
Everybody has that subject.
Yeah.
It's just a matter of whether or not you're willing to admit it. Everybody has a topic where it's like, please don't ask me this question.
Yes,
because you're going to find out I'm a fraud.
I'm a fraud. Yeah. And nothing's worse than being up in front of a room, speaking on a topic you know nothing.
Right.
I mean, that is like, that's when you read the slides.
Right, yeah.
Right? And you're like, okay, we'll go to the next one.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And what's funny about that, though, is you have to be honest, because the audience will see right through you. If you make well, number one, as an instructor, and if we're talking to any instructors out there watching, you have to be honest. The stakes are too high for you to make something up.
You lose your credibility.
You don't want to say something that's unsafe.
Absolutely. Right. And if you lose your credibility, you're done.
You're done.
Yeah. And
so you just got to be honest and say, nobody knows everything. This is my kryptonite, man. Sorry, you found it.
That's my kryptonite. I gotta remember that one. Oh, I can't move.
Right? Exactly.
Yeah, but Haslocks. I didn't know your strength. One of your strengths was Haslocks.
Yeah, I really enjoy Haslocks.
That's pretty good.
Yeah,
pretty good because I know IAEI has this locations book. I'm almost positive we have a Haslock book.
I'm pretty sure we do.
I think.
Yeah, I'm almost certain that we do.
Yeah. I know the Electrical Training Alliance also teaches that.
Okay.
Which is probably what Gary.
So Gary would have done that because Gary was
he trained for electrical training, the JATC.
Yeah, at the time, exactly. Yeah.
He's retired now.
He just retired, within the last year or so. I saw him a couple months ago. He's doing well.
Oh, I know.
And,
I'm friends with him on Facebook.
Yeah, Gary's great.
He's a great guy. He was. I taught 70E with him at the National Training Institute (NTI) last year.
Yeah.
And he is great to teach with.
Yeah.
He is a good mentor.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the other thing about our industry.
Oh.
When you come to these meetings, you build relationships, and then when you have these questions, at any time, it's like sometimes I feel like I don't know if I want to reach out. Just say Gary.
Yeah.
And I have a question, you think, am I bothering him, right?
Right. Yeah.
So then I'll send an email and say, or tag, like I had his cell phone, I text him and say, hey, do you mind if I ask you a question?
Yeah.
He's like, oh yeah, sure,
Oh yeah, absolutely.
And then you start talking, and then you spend 20, 30 minutes on the phone with the guy.
Yeah.
And you're like, well, and then you feel that comfort level because you're like, hey, we help each other in the industry.
Absolutely.
And you get people to spend time, and you would think that, this person he's teaching a class. John McCamish is another one of my mentors.
Yeah,
Donnie
Cook.
Too.
Yep.
Yeah, and you call these individuals, and they'll spend hours on the phone with you and walk you through things and help you understand it.
And there's so many people like that in our industry. There's so many. And you come to an event like this, and you meet more of them and more of them.
And then what that does, so like for me, when I went to my first IAEI meeting, I did not know a person. Okay.
Yeah.
Not a person. I knew one section of the code because it was the only one I cared about.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
And I'm sitting in the audience listening to them debate the steel tube, and I watched Dick Lloyd and Jim Pauley and all these people up there arguing on the stage, talking about things about the interrelation. And I was clueless. And I remember I went to a few meetings, and I was at the Southern section. And I asked Mark early, I said, Mark, I want to learn the code. And I'm realizing how much I don't know.
Yeah.
And he paired me up with Donnie Cook.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. And Donnie taught me so much. And then that knowledge I took back to my company because in my organization, I started to realize that people had a lot of questions on the code.
Yeah.
Or I would see things, I would be in a meeting and they would be talking about a new product, and I would go, that violates Article 250. And they would go, what do you mean? And I'd grab my book and I'd go, look, 250, whatever. And I'd say, you have to bond this. So we have to put a bonding jumper in there. And then all of a sudden, my value just went up in the organization.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden, my career took a different shift.
Right.
And so it helps. Nobody can take what you have up here.
Yeah. Right. Right.
And then when you build, and then if I see something in my organization and I go, I don't know if that's right, I pick up my phone. I call Donnie Cook. I call David Williams.
Yep.
I call David Humphrey. I call John McCamish. You know, all these different people that I've met at these meetings, and I get the answer.
And I don't know of a better place, not that I know of, than IAEI meetings to find those connections.
No, absolutely.
You know? I mean, when we were here the other day, when we started the Florida chapter meeting yesterday, Vince Dellacroce was kind of the master of ceremonies, I guess, if you will.
Yep.
And he's talking, and he said, you know, I want you guys to stop for a minute, because we got about 150 people in the house.
Right.
And he goes, I want you guys to stop a minute and just kind of look around and think about this for a minute. I guarantee that nowhere else in the world right this very second is there a room with more electrical code brain power than the one you're sitting in.
You're absolutely
Think about that and you know, consider it. And he's right. And I never thought of it that way.
Yep.
And I was thinking, that's kind of cool that I'm in that room.
That is exactly right. That's, when I first started going to the section meetings, and I would sit with the code book. I forget who it was I was sitting next to. I was watching somebody, and they said, "Oh, that's say Dick Lloyd." And I'll go, "Oh, you know, who's he?" And they look at me, and they grab the code book, and they flip over, and they go, "It's that guy right there." And I'm like, "Oh, wow." And I start looking around, and I'm looking through the names. I'm like, "Well,
that's him."
Yeah, that's him, and that's him. I'm like, you know, it gives you goosebumps, because you're like, these individuals. I mean, when you know, and not that, you know, again, people think that all the people who sit on the code panel write code and all that, and it's the thing is they're living it on a daily basis.
Yeah.
And if you want to understand the requirements in that section or in the article that they have the governance over, it's not that they're writing code, it's they're reviewing all of the public inputs. They're talking to all the different people who are making the arguments at the table. They're watching all the presentations from different people. And they have a different perspective. They can not just tell you, like I used to love, like Mark Early, and you know, and I see you do it, I do it, and others do it. I've never been able to do this 10, 15 years ago, right? Where I'll go, and I never thought I would be in that position.
Yeah, I know.
You know, when you say, well, you know, in the 17 code, we did this, and then we had to morph that into 2020 code. And when we did this, like the 6 disconnect stuff, you know, people say, well, why did they change the 6 disconnect? Like, well, really, it started with barriers in 408.
Right.
Because the exception was for the 6 disconnects in the same enclosure in panel boards. And you're like, well, and then all of a sudden someone said, well, why do we have an exception for that? Isn't that even more hazardous?
Yeah.
And then how do we solve that? And then you morph that. And you could tell that journey.
Yeah.
And I used to watch Dick do that and others do that. And I would be like in awe, you know, and I would think there is no way. But, you know, as you go to these meetings and you listen to this and you get involved with it, next thing you know,
you're one of them.
Yeah. And, you know, it's like, oh my gosh, you know,
right.
It's like,
well, that's just it. This morning I was teaching, and we were talking about swimming pools. We're talking specifically about immersion pools, which baptismal fonts. We can't say baptismal fonts in the code because for some religions it's a baptism, for others it's a different ritual, right?
Correct.
But we were talking about immersion pools. Now listen, I live in the mountains in Utah. I'm team teaching with Vince, who lives in Florida. He has swimming pools. I don't have swimming pools, right? He's in Florida, But I have little nuggets that I threw one out today, and I said, so this new immersion pool thing, and I gave the history of it, and I took it back to 2005. Yeah. And I said there was a pastor that got electrocuted in front of 800 people, grabbed a microphone, he's waist deep in water, doing a baptism, grabbed a microphone, died live in front of 800 people. Wow. And I told that story. How do you think I knew that story? Because Mike Johnston told that story at an IAEI meeting in 2005 when I was a young inspector trying to learn as much about everything, you know. And I remembered that story, and I was able to relay it today. And nobody in the room today, I don't think, knew that story. And everybody, and then Vince even, he was standing next to me. He goes, I didn't know that, you know. So all these little nuggets that are out there that everybody has, you know, everybody in that room has a story.
It's a story to tell. And then you take that back to your work, and then you relay that, and you can, you know, sometimes they're easy to recall. Sometimes I'll remember stuff like, oh my gosh, I don't know why I remember it, but I just know that the reason that was in there is because of this. Right. You know, and I know that because of these meetings. And then it's just so much value. And that's why when we say the IAEI helps you with your career, it's because you're more valuable to your organization because of what you learned here. Yeah. And it's because of the networks. When if I was an electrical contractor
and you're on a job site and you go, hey, what we're doing is wrong, and the inspector's going to flag this because it's wrong.
Yeah.
Right. And they go, or they ask you the question, is this right or wrong? If you don't know the answer, you go, wait a second. I'm going to call Donnie Cook, or I'm going to call this guy. I'm going to call Ryan Jackson because I know. And boom, hey, I got this going on. And then you go back, hey, we got to change this.
Right.
And it saves money and it saves time.
Yep.
You're more valuable.
Absolutely, 100%. And here in 2023, when we're filming this, we do a lot of online classes and things, and there's certainly a place for online classes, and education is valuable no matter how no matter how you consume it.
Right.
But in-person meetings like this are so much more valuable, in my opinion.
I
Because
agree.
you can watch as many online classes as you want, but you don't get the personal relationship building. Even if the guy, because I do a lot of online classes and I give out my cell number and my email address, but I don't get nearly as much participation there as I do here, whether it's in the classroom or in the hallway.
Yeah.
And I'll tell you what, the interactions in the hallway are just as important.
Yes, they are. Yeah. So if I wanted to go to your site.
Yeah. So my site, go to, my website is just ryanjacksonelectrical.com.
Okay.
Don't judge. I am the worst webmaster on the planet.
We'll judge.
You probably will. Yeah. I know they always have me judge wire-offs and competitions. It's not because I'm an expert at anything. It's because I judge people.
You're good at criticizing.
Yeah, exactly. So so my website, ryanjacksonelectrical.com, or go to my YouTube page, which is Ryan Jackson Electrical. And
so you go youtube.com/Ryan Jackson Electrical.
That'll get you there.
Okay.
Yep.
Or what if I went to ryanjacksonelectrical.com?
And you can click a YouTube link there.
Oh, that'll be on your website.
And you can also buy books and PowerPoints and things from.
Oh, that's right. You're an author.
I am an author. Yeah, I've written a book or two.
Written a book or two. That's great.
So I write textbooks for IEC, Independent Electrical Contractors.
Okay.
So I've got a 3-volume tome that is about 1,800 pages covering the National Electrical Code.
Wow.
And they put that out as part of their second year curriculum. And they keep those books throughout the rest of their apprenticeship, for all of the code training. So I'm kind of like the code book guy for IEC, for the apprenticeship program.
That's really
And I also write a code changes book for IEC as well. So I've
so you have a curriculum on the code, and then you have a code changes book.
Right. Yeah. Exactly.
Very nice.
Yeah. Exactly.
Very
So
nice.
the 3-volume set, it doesn't cover every single article. Look, I'm not going to talk about electrolytic
Is
cells.
your picture in the book?
Of course it is. It's on the book, baby. It's on the back though. It's not on the front. I'm not.
You're on the last page.
Yeah, I'm not putting my picture on the face. I'm not doing it. Like when I teach a class. Oh, you know what I hate. So I'm pretty well past getting nervous for classes. I've done a lot of classes. The part that I hate is the first 5 minutes when I have to talk about myself. That's when I just clam up.
I know.
Because I hate standing up there. I'm on code making, but I hate doing that. I don't like talking about myself. I don't like, So what it's like is your face on the book. Yeah, I wrote the book. My picture's in the book. Of course it is, but it's on the back. It's not the front.
That'd be like a picture of you on the front.
Oh yeah, like in a Speedo or something.
Yeah, there you go.
Holding a conduit bender and a piece of pipe. Yeah.
I love it. Jeez, oh man. So the Steel Tube Institute published documents?
Yeah, so we write position papers and white papers, and I think we're going to start doing more of that, and they're going to really utilize me to make videos and things. In fact, I've already recorded some that I haven't quite posted yet. I just got done recording a pretty deep dive on doing conduit fill, where we talk about all the different cable notes. How do you size it if it's an elliptical cable?
Oh, wow.
Why is it 53% and 31% and 40% and 60%, because those numbers, when you first look at it, don't make any sense.
Right.
And then I kind of go through some examples and show, if you take 2 conductors in a raceway and try to put more than 31%, you can't put them in the raceway because the diameter is bigger than the raceway. So kind of go over things like that. So so you're going to see a lot more educational content coming out of STI, videos, articles, things like that.
Okay. So if I wanted to go to Steel Tube Institute's website.
SteelTubeInstitute.org. I hope.
.org. Okay.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure it is.
SteelTubeInstitute.org.
He's looking it up right now. He's gonna check me right here.
I'm gonna get my iPad.
Man, fingers crossed. All right, I am almost certain it's Steel Tube. I've only been with Steel Tube for this year. Let's see.
Unacceptable.
Steel Tube Institute, the Steel Tube Institute. steeltubeinstitute.org.
Steel tube, and that's with an EEL, not an EAL.
Right, yeah, we're not thieves.
We
yeah,
don't
yeah.
thieve. You don't steal.
Yeah, we don't steal tubes. Yeah, no. Unless it's aluminum, we steal those.
That's the truth. That's the truth.
Can I say one thing regarding the stainless steel thing? This is something that I wasn't aware of this, but it's really problematic in the field. When people use stainless steel, a lot of times we're in food processing areas, right? Because you're not going to wire a house with stainless steel conduit.
Right.
You're usually doing that in like a food handling application.
Yep.
What we're seeing is people are not even using conduit; they're just using tube. They're using process tubing, stainless steel.
Process tubing.
So it's just pipe. It's not conduit.
It's not
listed. It's not electrical. It's just stainless steel pipe. And they're welding it together and pulling wires through.
That's not good.
That is not good.
No. I mean, right off the bat,
right.
I know you're going to make sharp edges on the inside.
You're going to have sharp edges. When you weld it, you're going to blister the inside of it if it's not,
That's right.
So, and it hasn't been tested. We don't know how much fault current that stuff can carry.
Yeah.
So at the end of the day, this isn't just me wearing my Steel Tube Institute hat.
No,
This is a safety issue, because if there's a fault on stainless steel process tubing, I have no idea how much current that thing can carry and whether or not it's gonna open a circuit breaker or fuse. So I wanted to bring that up really quick, and I appreciate you giving me the venue
that is
to do
a
it.
very good point.
Yeah, if you're an AHJ, please check that out. That really is a safety thing that we need to make sure is not happening.
Okay, and they should be able to spot that off the bat. That would be terrible to try to. I mean, I just know. Just as soon as you said welding.
Right.
Oh man.
Yeah.
That's absolutely terrible.
Yeah.
I mean, I've welded. I mean, I didn't get the nickname Grapes for nothing. So
I didn't know your nickname was Grapes. I have no idea what that even means.
Well,
you're a welder, and therefore your nickname is Grapes. What does that even mean?
If you're a bad welder,
I like to throw darts, and my name is. What does that even mean? My name's Grapes.
So when you weld, right?
Okay.
And burn too, right? So when you burn with tanks, and if you're welding, if you can get it to where the steel is just like clumped up.
Oh, those are grapes.
Like grapes, yeah. And they're just like big bubbles of steel.
Okay.
And
so if there's grapes,
it's probably more burning than welding, because you'll blow holes if you weld incorrectly. But I've managed to have little clumps of steel when I weld too.
Okay.
But, you gotta be careful.
Nice. Well, I want you to start calling me Joey Bananas, because I like to throw darts. So
I'll do that. Yeah.
You like to weld, so you're Tommy Grapes.
Tommy Grapes.
Yeah,
Tommy Two Grapes. Tommy Two Grapes.
Nice.
Tommy Two Grapes.
He used to grape everything twice. Like, I'm gonna go weld.
I'm gonna go weld. What was that in? It was in the movie.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Goodfellas. Yeah.
That's right.
Every time Tommy and I get together, it's we don't even talk in English. It's just like movie.
It's
just movie sayings over and over and over.
Absolutely. Oh my gosh. I know what's funny is
because our brains work identical.
Identical. But you went like this.
Yeah. Identical.
My cousin Vinny.
Yep.
Yeah. And it's funny is I'll do stuff like that, like on my YouTube channel, and then you'll comment.
Right. Oh yeah.
And something like if you're not there, some people don't get it.
They have no idea what I'm talking
about, right?
Yeah.
It's like,
well, that was like I'm doing the class today, and it's on swimming pools, and there's a picture showing the required height to overhead conductors above a pool, and there's a house right next to the pool, and there's some circuit conductors.
Sure.
And I'm doing the class, and I'm like, look, I'm not saying Johnny Knoxville is going to jump off the roof into the pool. And I look out there, and nobody has any idea, and I'm like, all right, well, that one didn't hit. That one didn't work.
Like a lead balloon. True. Yeah, but it is so true. It's like, I throw out these things and people like just look at you. I just did a class Monday and Tuesday. I had a bunch of ones. There was one guy. In fact, there was a commercial. There was I did a jingle from a commercial. I couldn't even remember what it was. It wasn't the I'm not gonna eat it. Let's get Mikey.
Oh yeah.
It was something else. And I was like, when I said it, I'm like, where was that from? And there was one guy in the front row, and he said the commercial, and he was like, he was the only one in the room.
You're my man. Yeah. You and I.
He knew it. He knew him. Identical. Such a good movie. Anyway, all right. Yeah, so it was good.
Well, Tom,
thank you.
Thanks for having me, man.
Yeah, I appreciate you taking the time. Well, thank you. Thanks for what you do for the industry. Really appreciate it.
Yeah, I appreciate it.
So,
thanks, Tom.
Thanks for all your knowledge.
Yep.
Vince Dellacroce.
Yeah. Welcome, my friend.
Welcome.
I haven't seen you in a few weeks.
I know, and I'm in your backyard. This is your chapter, isn't it? I mean, this is your home chapter.
This is my home division. So
Division.
Florida is a little unique from IAEI perspective.
Hold on. Stop. Florida?
Florida? I think I said Florida. What'd you say?
You said Florida.
That's what I said, Florida.
All right. Florida is a home division.
Well, Florida has IAEI chapter,
Right.
like most states have, but we're a little unique in the state of Florida because we also have, under the chapter, I think we're at 9 divisions
Really?
inside the state. So we're in Hutchinson Island, Florida, right now. This falls under my home division, which would be the Treasure Coast Division.
Treasure Coast Division of the Florida chapter.
The Florida chapter. So we have,
Okay.
if I work around the state, we have the, and I'll try not to miss any, we have the Panhandle Division,
Okay.
right? Obviously up in the Panhandle. We have a North Florida Division,
Okay.
the Jacksonville area.
Okay.
And we work down the coast. There's a Central Florida Division.
Okay.
There's a Gulf Coast Division. That's more like the Venice, Florida area, west coast of
yeah.
Florida.
Yeah.
We've got Central Florida Division that handles the Tampa area.
Okay.
We have our division here on the Treasure Coast, which is the St. Lucie County, Martin County area. Just south of us, Palm Beach Division.
Palm Beach.
Just south of those folks is the Fort Lauderdale Division,
Oh, wow.
Broward County, and then even further south than that, we have a Miami-Dade Division. So if I didn't miss any,
Oh, that's a lot.
that's
I'm only
math, and you
Yeah.
didn't tell me there was going to be math.
I know,
Here.
I know.
Math is hard, so.
I didn't know I was going to have to use my fingers, so
Yeah, so we're kind of have a unique structure here with all those divisions.
yeah.
And what we do for this, our annual Florida chapter meeting, is we have a rotation list amongst the divisions. So this Florida chapter meeting will move around the state every year, and each division gets to host.
Right.
So I think next year we're scheduled to be in, I believe, St. Augustine
Ooh,
area.
nice.
And the year after that, we're going to be, I believe, up in the Panhandle, in the Pensacola area.
Pensacola. Well, that's absolutely awesome. So this year, or for this meeting here, we had the executive board meeting of the IAEI meeting here in the at this. I thought this is the chapter meeting.
This is our annual chapter.
This is so with the Florida chapter meeting, which is in this division. I'm getting
Treasure
it.
Coast Division is
Treasure
hosting
Coast,
this year.
absolutely. Okay, so we had the board of directors here, the executive board meeting, which I think was absolutely awesome. And during that meeting, your name was brought up as a rock star.
Oh boy.
Right? Yeah, it was. And Rudy Garza was very impressed, as I believe the entire executive board was very impressed with what you, and supposedly you and your team and the team here are very instrumental in making it happen. And what I wanted to do is take this moment take the time while we were together, which we get together every now and then, and it's a great opportunity. So what I'd love for you to do is explain what your team was able to organize and the importance of that for the IAEI. I would say that it's important for Florida, but based upon our discussion in the executive board meeting, it could be a model for other chapters and divisions to take
Yeah,
on.
so and it's not, I'm glad you said team, because it's not me.
I'm with you.
We have a big board of directors here in Florida because we have representation from all the divisions. So when we have a board of directors meeting, it's 30 to 40 people strong.
Wow.
Because we have representation from all our divisions. But we do have, like most chapters, we have an education committee at the chapter level. I'm privileged to chair that committee, but I also have some of our board members, and I hope I don't forget any of their names, who are on the education committee with me. I chair it, but Debbie Nutter, who's on the Palm Beach division, is on that committee. Vinnie Burdo, who's part of our with the Treasure Coast Division, who's also our Florida chapter secretary, is on that committee. Ken Castronovo, who is out of the Broward County Division.
Okay.
And also a fellow Panel 17 member in that. Kenny
okay.
just got appointed to Panel 17 just a few months ago.
Awesome.
And I'm on Panel 17 also, so it'll be nice to have Kenny participate on that. And Bud Kiefer, who is out of the Gulf Coast Division, is on the Education Committee also. And I think that's all the folks. And if I forgot somebody, I'm going to apologize. So
You apologize in advance. Right?
yeah, I'll apologize in advance. But so the Education Committee, just within the last few months, to your point, Tom, has been successful in signing an MOU or Memorandum of Understanding with the Building Officials Association of Florida.
Building Officials Association of Florida. It's BOAF.
BOAF, so we call it here BOAF.
Okay.
And that's what those folks call it. And they're a BOAF falls under the ICC umbrella of building official groups. So they have affiliation with ICC, right? Like most chapters of ICC do.
So that was one of my questions. It was going to be. Now you said BOAF. So the last that F is Florida.
Correct.
Is there a similar organization in other states?
Yeah, for example, we go straight north from here to Georgia.
Yeah.
There's BOAG, Building Officials Association of Georgia, for example, and I know they have an affiliation
With the
to
ICC.
ICC.
And the IAEI just we're more closely aligned with the ICC, not like we were like an acquisition or anything like that. We have a partnership together, and this could be something that we could roll out based upon what you've learned and your team has learned on how to make something like this happen in other states.
I'm sure the opportunity is there, and I'm sure it's would be on a state by state basis with the folks of those particular building official groups in those states. We've had a relationship, the IAEI Florida chapter and BOAF, for quite a few years now. We interact with that organization as best we can. They're gracious enough to, we've had a seat on their board of directors for quite a few years, and we try to, fill that seat when they have meetings. I've gone to those meetings. We have other of our members of our board of directors who will participate. So we try to fill the slot when they meet and have participation and discussions with them. But I'm going to give a lot of credit also to Ann Russo, who is the executive director of BOAF here in Florida. She's been very gracious in our discussions as we've worked through this memorandum of understanding with them, which is going to enable the Florida chapter of IAEI to do some online training or webinars in conjunction with BOAF.
Right.
And we're going to be the SMEs or subject matter experts to provide NEC training and have it meet continuing education requirements for folks here in Florida, for both what we call specifically here in Florida ECLB, which would be an Electrical Contractors Licensing Board.
Okay.
That's the state board that governs licensing for contractors, electrical contractors and electrical specialty type contractors. We also have another board here in Florida, which we call BCAB, which is Building and Contractors and Inspectors Board, or something close to that. And that's the state board that governs the licensing of inspectors, plans examiners, building officials here in Florida. So we got two different boards. From a overall technical perspective, each have general/technical continuing education requirements, which would be, for our purposes, the NEC stuff. Right. Each of those boards also has some what they call required hours. For example, we covered some of these hours yesterday. Contractors here in Florida need some safety training. Yeah. They need some what's called laws and rules training. Yeah. And they also need ethics? Workers' comp. Workers' comp. Okay. If we go to the BCAB side of the world for the inspectors and plans examiners and building officials, the state requires those folks to have ethics and I think accessibility training and a couple other specialties. So the Florida chapter for IAEI with the BOAF MOU,
Right.
we're going to focus on the general technical and cover NEC related topics through those webinars. The BOAF folks, more of the specialists for those specific required hours, we'll let them continue to do that, and they do it very well. They're the experts at that.
Right.
But they are gracious enough to recognize that we have the expertise from the electrical side of the world.
That's perfect.
So initially, what we're going to do, again, and a big thanks to Ann Russo for being very open to these discussions. We're gonna start with, since Florida is going to move to the 2020 NEC as of January 1st. We're going to do a series of webinars. I think we have the first one slated for July. There'll be 4 parts, parts 1 through 4, 2-hour courses.
Right.
And we'll use that total of 8 hours to cover 2020 changes. And we're going to repeat that. I believe the schedule is kind of like do it in July, do it in September, October, and November.
Right.
This way, as many folks as possible will be ready come July 1st.
That's
and
perfect.
then hopefully in the future after that, we'll expand maybe to some other topics, NEC topics. And come 2024, we'll expand with some other webinars. That's the hope anyway.
That's the whole. So the cool thing that you're doing is you're leveraging. You're basically taking, which I think what may be the model for other states, because I think you have a unique situation with regard to the licensing requirements. Some states may not have some of that, right? But you're basically saying, look, we are the IAEI is the electrical knowledge owner or the experts, the subject matter experts on electrical applications, electricity, and the National Electrical Code is your cornerstone, and you're partnering with other organizations that have to deliver education on electrical and saying, we want to be that provider. And they're welcome you with open arms, basically, because of relationships. And now, correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe in the board meeting when we were talking about this, I can't remember who it was said, no, hold on, remember, this didn't happen overnight.
That was me.
Was that you? Okay.
Yeah, this is really fruition after many years of having a relationship with BOAF and their executive director, Ann, and supporting some events for them over the years, and them supporting events here. They have, I'm going to point down the hall because our vendors are set up or actually breaking down the hall. We're coming to the close of this our annual chapter meeting, but BOAF had a table here, and they have a presence, and we'll have a presence at their annual meeting, which is, I want to get my dates right, because like Tom, I'm on the road quite a bit, so the days kind of get muddled. About a month from now.
About a month, okay.
Maybe 6 weeks from now. I think it's the second week of June, but they'll have BOAF will have their annual meeting up in Orlando. We'll have a presence there. I think what we did this year was kind of agree to a booth vendor swap.
Perfect.
Where they can have a spot here, which they did, and we'll have a spot up there with a wash of money exchange, if we want to say in that, right? We're reciprocating. So each has a presence. But, they've been supporting some events that we've had over the years. We've supported some of their efforts over the years, and we've finally been able to, to really bring it to fruition now. I think
great.
What we're going to achieve both ways. And I think the beauty of it really is for folks in the IAEI world and different chapters and divisions across the country, other than our international office, which has staff, our chapters and divisions don't have any paid staff. We're all volunteers.
That's right,
BOAF here in Florida, building officials, they have staff, and they always have. So some of the processes and procedures that we need to pull off a webinar, registration,
they can help,
collecting, invoicing people, issuing continuing education certificates, sending out meeting invites, advertising. BOAF has had that process in place for many years, because they've been doing this for many years. And they're enabling us to just piggyback on that. And they're going to do a lot of the heavy lifting. on that perspective. And but we're going to provide the content, and it'll be IAEI content,
Right.
and we're going to provide the instructors for that, and it'll be our IAEI subject matter experts, and provide the training. So I think it's a win for both of us. They get exposure to IAEI. From our perspective, we get IAEI exposure out to maybe some building official folks who maybe didn't have exposure previously.
Sure.
Or maybe they're just garnering folks in their database who have taken their classes who the IAEI hasn't had exposure to either. And we get exposure to those folks and do some, brand recognition and get the IAEI logo and expertise of material.
Absolutely.
Out to
Brand
those folks.
awareness.
Yep.
Brand awareness, and you're building relationships with anybody. I think what I like about what you guys did is you're establishing IAEI as a leader in subject matter expert of the electrical codes. And it goes. I think a lot of our materials around electrical codes, but I think as well as I do, when you're presenting and you have a subject matter expert, whether it be yourself or a guy like Ryan Jackson or others, questions come up that go beyond the basic fundamentals of what does this section of the code say. There's a lot of design discussions. There's a lot of problem solving, right, that goes on in these meetings, and then you build those relationships that last outside of the four walls and in the meeting rooms.
Yeah, and I think probably most chapters and most folks who participate in IAEI, I think a lot of us have the same backgrounds.
Yeah.
Whether that's an engineering background or we have AHJ experience. A lot of us are electricians who came up through the trade.
Yep.
And all that I think it becomes very aware to folks who are receiving some training. When you can share the war stories, and some of the background of why code changes happen. A lot of us are fortunate enough to have been in on discussions, whether we're attending a CMP meeting or first draft or a second draft meeting. And a lot of folks on the receiving end of training just don't have that exposure because they're busy running the contracting firm or involved with the municipality or doing their jobs, right? And a lot of us who are going to do this training through our board of directors, I'm trying to think of who's going to do it, but most of us, or at least 3 or 4 of our instructors, are CMP members at our board level. So we can bring some of that background discussion to the conversation.
And you always have the ability as a chapter or a division within the IAEI to leverage any one of the experts across the country.
Absolutely.
Right? So if you need a subject matter expert that happens to be in California or Oregon or weird in West Virginia, you can always say, hey, I want to give this person a call and see if they can't align and share their knowledge. And that's the power of IAEI, really, in my opinion.
It is. It's networking, right? And it's knowing that you have resources, folks, warm bodies that we can tap into when there's a question. And it's nice to have them in the phone and just be able to queue people up and give them a call.
I used to say Rolodex, and we can't say that anymore because when I say Rolodex, everybody goes, you're dating yourself.
All right, so I hope you guys enjoyed that session. We had a great discussion with Ryan, and we began the discussion with Vince Dellacroce, and we're going to continue that next week. I've got Vince Dellacroce, we got Jeff Fecteau, and another special guest talking about the hospitality room. So stay tuned for that next week. Thanks for what you do for the electrical industry. Thanks for taking the time out to watch this, and see you next week.